Our guest on today's show is Carol Roth. Carol is the creator of the legacy planning system Future File, a recovering investment banker, a business advisor, and author of the New York Times bestseller, The Entrepreneur Equation. She is a national media personality and is a weekly panelist on the Fox business show Bows and Bears. With over 20 years of business advisory experience, Carol has worked with small to medium-sized businesses as well as Fortune 500 companies on all aspects of business and financial strategy. Thanks for joining us today, Carol.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I know you're very busy, so I do want to thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule to be on our show. I'm just going to get right into it. And if you can just let people know, like, what do people know you by today? Like, because I've read a lot about your bio and your history, and what do you do now? Like,
what the heck?
And then I'll go backtrack.
Yeah, this is a question I get all the time. I consider myself a multi-hyphenate. I always put it in sort of 3 buckets, and the last one's a cheat. So about a third of my time I spend in the media. As you mentioned, I have been in the media for more than a decade. I'm on TV every single week, sometimes up to 5+ times a week, doing news commentary. I have been a judge for Mark Burnett on a tech competition show called America's Greatest Makers. I've hosted shows for Microsoft and Bank of America. So I like being in front of the camera, sharing my knowledge. I also do a lot of writing. You mentioned the book as well. So that media piece takes up about a third of my time. About a third of my time, I am an entrepreneur and small business owner myself. You mentioned my legacy planning system, Future File, which is a kit that we created after losing a bunch of loved ones. And my dad actually created the prototype for my sister and I, so we would have all of his wishes and information if something were to happen to him. And lo and behold, something happened to him about 6 years ago, and we needed to access that information to make some decisions, and ultimately, when he didn't make it, lay the body to rest and wrap up his personal affairs. So we wanted to help other families do the exact same thing, save money, save hundreds of hours, and make sure that my dad's legacy and their legacy were the same, which is keeping family members being allies instead of adversaries. So I have that product, and I've got a bunch of consulting and other things that I do on sort of the entrepreneurial side. And then I have my other bucket, which is everything from speaking to sitting on boards of directors, and a whole bunch of like other kind of little projects there. So as I said, the third bucket's a little bit of a cheat, but I always tell people that I'm a recovering investment banker, that I'm an entrepreneur, and I play myself on TV, and that usually covers most of what I do.
Wow, it sounds like you're really busy, right?
Yes.
So
I am not ever bored, ever.
Well, that's amazing. So I'm just going to backtrack it a little bit. And if you can just let the audience members know, like, how did you get yourself into what you're doing today, into the 3 buckets? Like, did you go to school wanting to be an entrepreneur or wanting to be in person TV? Or how did you come about to get to where you are?
Yeah, so I went to school wanting to make money because neither of my parents went to college, and so I was going to be the first one to graduate from college. I got accepted to a fabulous school, Wharton Undergrad, which is the preeminent business school for undergrads in the U.S., and my parents couldn't afford to send me, so I had to work through school. I had to take on a lot of debt. And my dad's financial advice to me was always, don't have any debt. So if you're going to take this on, you need to be able to pay it back as quickly as possible. And so when we did the ROI calculation, I found out that there were sort of 2 types of careers I could have to pay it back quickly and also get a lot of knowledge that I could maybe use in a variety of ways. One was management consulting, where you go very deep into an issue and become really a subject matter expert and help other companies. And then the other was investment banking. I always joke that it's for the people who have ADD and want to be working on like 12 deals at the same time. Clearly, guess, John, which one I gravitated towards. I gravitated towards the investment banking so I could be working on a bunch of things at the same time. And purely my motivation at the time was to pay down my debt, set myself up, to be financially flexible, and to learn as much as possible so that I could take that skill set and then figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I haven't quite figured out what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still working on that. But what I did do is I paid down the debt in a year and a half, and then I set myself up in a flexible place that I could pursue other things. And TV was just a random idea that people kept saying, like, oh, you seem like you have a personality. It'd be great on TV. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun. I love TV. Like, what do I do? And so, when the internet was still kind of, just starting to percolate with, brands and blogs and things like that, I started doing videos about small business and entrepreneurship and leverage that into regular media, doing radio and local television, and leverage that into national television. And, here I am doing all these crazy things and interviewing presidential candidates and weighing in on stuff that I never really expected to. So I always wanted to do that, but at the same time, I still love being involved in business. I've always been entrepreneurial, so I wanted to still have my hands in that. And I'm just one of those people that likes to do a lot of different things. So I just sort of crafted this weird collection of experiences, and I'm continuing to experience them.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that journey from being an investment banker to kind of picking the minds of some of the successful people, I'm sure, because you were able to work with them and, invest their money. So you had that relationship where then you can pick their brain as to whatever subjects that you were interested in.
Yeah,
and that,
so just to clarify on that, so from the investment banking that I did, I was in corporate finance.
Okay.
And so my job was to help companies raise money and to do mergers and acquisitions. So any sort of major food brand, restaurant brand that went public in the 90s, Cheesecake Factory, Lone Star, Planet Hollywood, all of those, I was involved with all of their capital raising and M&A, also some tech companies and the like. So I really worked on the corporate side, but it gave me a really keen insight into businesses and how they operated and what worked and what didn't work, that I was able to sort of apply more broadly as I talk about everything from small business up to working with companies like Microsoft.
Awesome. So even when you started branching off to do your own thing, were there people that helped you along the way? Were there mentors or coaches or people that you inspired to become, to push you and motivate you to become who you are?
So I've never had a hero or someone that I've specifically looked up to, like, hey, I'm modeling myself after X. That's never appealed to me. Even with TV, I never wanted to be an actress. I always wanted to play myself. I'm very all about this is me and I'm being me, not somebody else. So I've never had sort of that role model or that one person who said, hey, I'm going to put you under my wing and I'm going to show you the way. What I have had is what one of my friends calls the 5-minute mentors. Okay. So somebody who has a specific piece of advice or maybe makes one introduction that opens up a path to something else. And I've had innumerable numbers of those people who either I've met personally who helped me in these very small but significant ways, or people who I've looked up to a specific aspect of something that they've done and what that's kind of interesting. Let me see how I could maybe make something like that my own. And I think that is a big fallacy that a lot of people have, that they just want the one person who's been successful. If only Bill Gates or Warren Buffett would pay attention to me and tell me their secrets, I could be just like them. And it really doesn't work that way. Some people are lucky and create a relationship, and that ends up being the outcome for them. But I think most people miss the opportunity to take these 5-minute mentoring sessions and apply that to what they're doing and take all of this, kind of cumulative advice. And you have to remember, not all advice is good advice, and not all advice works for you either. So you have to have a filter for it. And just because someone successful said it, it doesn't mean it works. In fact, I'll share a story here without giving away the name, but there is a major financial guru that when I was first starting out, and I said, she's done a really cool job. I'm going to see if she wants to be my mentor. And I went to see her at a book signing, and this was kind of before I started any of this. And I said, I'm sure you're busy. You might not have time to be a mentor, but do you have any advice? And she said, oh, just do good work and people will find you. And I went back home and I'm like, that's a bunch of crap. I'm not taking that advice at all. If I don't advocate for myself and I don't put myself out there and I don't push and I don't make the connections, this is never going to happen. And her advice was terrible. I'm so glad I didn't listen to it, because there are plenty of people doing good work in their corners of the world that nobody knows about. In this day and age, you have to be pushing that out there. So I guess I'm glad that she wasn't my mentor.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, putting yourself out there is so important, right? As an entrepreneur, because, there's millions of them out there,
yeah,
but they're not visible, right? They're not taking action. Like, they're not the ones putting themselves in media or in publications or speaking or getting their name out there. So how did you start that process? Because obviously you've had great success. Like, how did you start? And for all these entrepreneurs thinking of starting, this would be great advice, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this is your wheelhouse with SEO. I mean, that is the place where you get started. As an entrepreneur today, you do not have the luxury of not being a marketer. I know people don't like it and they just want to run their business or do their product or service, but unfortunately those days are gone. I mean, here in the US, we have 30.2 million small businesses. In Canada, you have millions more. There are millions more around the world. Like, there are a lot, and that's all competing for people's time and attention. So you have to be marketing. And so that means having a web presence. I mean, that was the very first thing that I started doing, was having a web presence attached to my name and attached to keywords, doing videos, creating content. One thing that we do on our site at carolroth.com, which is a hub for small business, is we actually invite other small business owners to get publicity by having them participate in a big question that we ask every single month. So it could be a best marketing tip, or it could be tips for small business, whatever it is. And we let our community participate, shine a light on their expertise, so we're giving back to them, but then they're all out promoting it and we're out promoting it, and then you get this exponential effect of people being aware of it. And then when somebody's searching for that key term, as you know, we've got a lot of traffic going to that key term, so if somebody's looking for that, they're being driven to our website. So the web was really where I started building my brand, and where I've continued to invest time even today, because as we know, those search results change all the time, and we still have our community participating in that. And so with the stuff that I do independently, I'm always making sure to integrate the touch points between what I'm doing in media, offline and online together, so that I am creating that trail of information and ranking high for those search terms.
That's amazing. Great advice, because engagement with the community and a ton of contributors, right, that are giving feedback and then amplifying your message, where then people are sharing and commenting and liking you on different channels, and you don't know how people are ingesting all this content, right? So for you to actually proactively do this at years in advance of how people were thinking before, I mean, that is great to hear, because if more and more entrepreneurs actually take your advice, they would be further ahead than waiting for things to happen, right? People are very reserved. They don't want to put themselves out there. And the ones that do, they're the ones that are going to be successful. They're the ones that are going to gain much more media attention and be able to grow and scale their business, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be on a personal level. It can be at the business level. You're showcasing your expertise through content. If you have a nursery, share content about everything related to gardening that might be of interest to your customers. If you're a doctor, share information about how to live a healthy lifestyle and wellness and prevention before people get to you. That kind of stuff is what people are looking for. And so it shines a light on your business or your practice. It doesn't mean that you have to be the person. You personally don't have to go on TV and do all these things, but you do want your business to be a thought leader, because that's the kind of stuff that will rank highly from an SEO perspective, is the kind of stuff that people will share, and you're adding value to your customer so that they know, okay, well, that really seems like this business knows what they're talking about. And that's when they're making a decision between all of these other businesses, it's a great way for them to pick doing business with you. No,
I mean, you touched on awesome points, because becoming thought leader, expert, or authoritative figure in your industry, in your niche or in your regional market. I mean, positioning yourself, right? Seeing who's out there, and if you feel like you can do way better or bring more value, start that process of just giving away content, giving away images, video, podcasts, whatever it is. The more you give, things are slowly going to happen, but it's long-term, right? It's not going to be quick wins. The challenge is a lot of people want quick wins, and this is social media. This is instant messaging. This is email, right? Do you know what I mean? This is
I do.
Entrepreneurs, right?
10-year overnight successes. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with entrepreneurship. When people start businesses, I always tell them to give themselves 3 years. If you're really going to make a go at it, that it takes 3 years to build a foundation for a business. And the same thing goes with your social footprint. You can't expect that you go out day one and all of a sudden you put something out there and everybody's going to react to it. You have to build that following. It takes a long time to build. But like you said, if you're not monitoring that every single day, if you're kind of looking at it, by year and over longer periods of time, you really do get there. And if you have a small but engaged community, that can be even more valuable than having a huge community where people aren't engaged. I mean, the reality is, as I've broken down numbers for people before, if you can get people, you get 100 people to buy $100 a month from you, think about what that does for your business, and then start multiplying that out. That's pretty substantial.
Exactly. And making sure that you have a product or service that people actually want to buy, right? Like knowing your audience, knowing your what do you bring to the table that no one else can provide, or if there is a service that you're competing with, what makes you stand apart, right?
Yeah.
What's your unique, what makes you unique?
Yeah, and then once you get that customer, making sure that they've already had this great experience with you, making sure you don't forget about them. I think a lot of people spend so much time going after the new customers, they don't realize how valuable their existing customers are within this whole dynamic. I mean, not only is it easier to upsell and sell more often to people who already love you, but those are the people who are going to advocate for you with their friends or their business colleagues or whatnot. So really investing the time to give more to them and give them those reasons to come back and continue to interact with you and continue to recommend you.
Exactly. Like the loyalty, the newsletters, the offers, recommendation, referrals, even testimonials, right? Like what happens after the sale is as important or probably more important than getting that first sale, that new customer, because lifetime value of that customer could be way longer with 3 or 4 referrals as well, right? And therefore, you have to understand what the true cost of that new customer is and retain them.
Yes. Yes.
So I've been learning. This is my first venture in entrepreneurship. I started this company 6 years ago, but I'm learning and I'm getting great advice. And I love this kind of speaking and engagement with people that are successful, right? And are proof of what hard work actually means, right?
Yeah, hard work and smart work. Listen, there are plenty of people who work very hard, but don't do the right things and don't invest their time in things that will actually drive revenue. Anyone can be busy. We live in a time where it's very easy to be busy, but you don't want to be busy. You want to be busy in pursuit of revenue and profit. And there's a difference between that. And I always go back to ROI versus ROE. ROI is return on investment. ROE is return on ego. There are plenty of things, getting social media likes that don't drive revenue and don't build brand loyalty. You can do a lot of things to get return on ego, but unless you can pay your rent and your employees with ego, that's not going to do you very much. So you want to focus on the return on investment. Where am I really spending my time that is going to translate, whether it's today or if you're in the kind of business where there's a long sales cycle, maybe 6 months or a year into those customers that I can then spend more time with. That's really how you want to be spending your time, because again, lots of people working really hard, but that doesn't necessarily translate into dollars for you.
Exactly. So I'm going to ask you this. What has been some of the biggest challenges or, mistakes that you've made over the years in terms of running your business or being adversary? Like you've seen a lot, over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
How did people overcome them? And, if you can share some of those examples.
So one of my first challenges, which I see a lot in entrepreneurs, particularly small business owners, and especially a lot of female small business owners, is not thinking big enough. That if you're going to bother spending all your time focusing on a business, it's almost as difficult to run a 7-figure business as it is to run a 6-figure business. Sometimes it's harder to run the 6-figure business than the 7-figure or the 8-figure business. So really push yourself from a goal standpoint. And if you've got a good business idea, is there a way, is this big enough? Is this, a big enough opportunity to really justify all the time that I'm spending on it? Is it scalable? Is it something where I can bring in other people to do aspects of it and it's still going to produce revenue? Or is it all dependent on me? And when I go on vacation, the business stops? Because that's not really a business, that's a job business, which is a business you pay for the pleasure of having, basically. And I talk about this in my book, The Entrepreneur Equation. So I think that thinking big enough and not having the systems in place to really scale your business is a big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make. And certainly just not having the ability to persist and pivot. As I said, it takes a long time, not only 3 years, but I have another rule of 3 in business, which is that everything costs 3 times more, takes 3 times as long, and is 3 times as difficult as you think it will be and as it probably should be. And that's just the reality of being an entrepreneur. So if you start to get bogged down and frustrated by how long things are taking and how much more expensive it was than you expected and why everybody's so slow, it's going to frustrate the heck out of you. So you need to pursue it with that vigor that it's going to get done tomorrow, but still have the patience when you realize it's going to take a lot longer.
And that's great points, because as an entrepreneur, you feel like everyone that you hire are going to have the same kind of motivation and aspirations as you do, right?
No.
But they do not. Exactly. Because you're working, 12, 14, 16-hour days, and they're tapping out after 8 hours, and they take 2-hour lunch breaks, and they take 30 minutes here and there. Like, the commitment level is completely different because your, blood, sweat, tears, everything is in this business. What do they have to lose?
Right, exactly. It's a risk-reward scenario, and they have a very little downside. I think the other issue that I'd like to bring up too is the one around money. Is that everybody thinks that more money is going to fix their problems, and if you don't know what you're going to do with that money, and you don't have a pretty clear return on investment for that money, it's not going to fix your problems, and you're just going to burn through that cash and be looking at, okay, what do we do now? So money is not the be-all, end-all, and also the kind of like the mentor discussion we had, the big partnership is not your answer too. The other was like, well, if Nike just saw what I was doing and distributed my line of clothing, it would be successful. Well, duh, obviously everybody else too, but they have their own business to run, and they're not going to risk their brand on whatever you're doing over here that's just started. So stop living in fantasy land. You're not going to have this big benefactor who's going to do your business for you. So you have to bootstrap, and you have to build it from the ground up. And I think having that level of reality is very helpful for entrepreneurs.
But it's very difficult, would you say? Because right now, the last 5 or 10 years, technology has advanced quite fast, rapid, with the advent of social media, with the advent of all these apps, instant everything. And people are selling you on these great hacks and great, get quick rich schemes and whatever, right? And people are baited by that. But if you take a step back, and me and you, we're entrepreneurs, we've seen it all, right? But people that are just starting, it's very difficult because these people proven success, right?
We don't know that they said they have proven success. I know a lot of people who say one thing, and then when you really break it down, it's not actually what they mean.
I know what you mean, but they're sold, right? And there's so much out there. How do you get, control of not getting fooled by these people?
Ignore it. I mean, the reality is that most businesses are made or broken on basic blocking and tackling. All of this foofy stuff around the edge and all the sparkly stuff is pretty irrelevant to your business. And so I would just ignore it altogether. Just focus on making sure that you have an outstanding product or service that meets the customer's need, that you're the right person to deliver it, that you're providing great customer service, that you're doing those things in terms of thought leadership and following up, that you always treat your customers as well or better than new customers. Hello? Think about every cable company. It's like, oh, here's the deal for you because you don't work with us, but hey, you loyal customer, too bad for you. No, everybody hates that. So don't be that guy or gal. And if you just do those basics, of course there are going to be problems and it's not going to be perfect, but if it's good enough, that is the key for entrepreneurs. And this is very hard. There are a lot of us who tend to be anal retentive and towards perfectionists. And perfectionism is the antagonist of entrepreneurship. You cannot be a perfectionist and be an entrepreneur. You have to serve your customer. And if your customer is well served, it's fine if there's room to grow. You can have version 2 or version 3 or version 4 or the upgrade or enhanced version of your product or service. They have an expectation for that. Look at iPhones, look at everything. They're always improving it, but you can't wait for it to be perfect to put it in their hands. So if you're delivering something that's good and it's providing value, that is good enough for you as an entrepreneur.
And that's amazing advice you're giving, because if you have an idea or if you're thinking of doing entrepreneurship, just go out and see if it actually would generate revenue. Go out and see if you can get customers that are willing to pay for your service.
And that are not related to you.
Of course. No family at all. But what I'm saying is so many people are like wasting so much time, valuable time, doing research, business plans, business analysis, figuring out how they're going to finance it without even knowing if this is a sustainable business with revenue and it will last for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, right? Like, what's the most basic fundamental thing? Go out, see if there's revenue that you can generate profit. If it's not generating profit, what are you doing? Go get yourself, or figure out what, change up the business, or go get a different job or something, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of selling before you even have something to sell, to see if it works, and then you can scramble to get it done and to service that customer. It's much better than spending all your time trying to create something and then trying to go find somebody to buy it, to find that nobody really wants the configuration that you have. You have to accept failure as part of the process, and the right way to fail is to fail quickly, cheaply, and never the same way twice. If you remember that, just sort of accept it as part of the process.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm so fortunate. I came from a sales background, so I just bootstrapped my way starting the business, and I made so many pivots, so many mistakes over the years, and customers are okay with it as long as you admit to the mistake and you try to make good, right? Like, you try to advance and you let them know these are the things that we kind of should have done previously, and now we're kind of doing now, but it's really to benefit you. And yeah, I was starting off and I didn't know, right? Like, just be honest with people, and
exactly.
They are okay with people making mistakes. They make mistakes all the time, right?
Well said. Very well said.
It's a matter of life, right? And right now, even myself, I'm always still making mistakes, but I'm always pivoting. I'm trying to figure things out. And yes, I'm having a lot of fun doing it, because it's just, life, right? As long as you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't really feel like work, right? And you're in a good spot when that happens.
That's the key. If it's feeling like work, maybe retool it a little bit.
Exactly. So in terms of advice, I know you mentioned some of the failures and mistakes. Can you think of things that you can give in terms of tips, or people that have kind of been doing it for a long time, or even just starting off? Like, what can you advise them in terms of how do you move ahead? How do you scale? What triggers you to take that next step?
I think a good thing to do is to take a look at your business 2 times a year at a minimum and do 2 things. One is make it more automated and put people in better use, and then look at how you can grow the business. So on the first piece, we sit down and we say, okay, what are you spending time on? Is there a technology that can do this more quickly? Is there somebody else who would be better doing this, and you'd be better off spending your time elsewhere. And we have that critical review with every sort of aspect of our business and every person who works in our business. And it's really important. And every year, we do things on a more automated basis, and we find better and easier ways to do some of the things that take up a lot of time, particularly things that don't produce a lot of revenue. So that's one focus, and that sort of optimizes your expenses and makes you more productive and more lean. On the top line basis, we also take a look and say, okay, what's working? So what can we double down on in terms of the things that are working? And what else can we offer our existing customers? So are there holes in terms of our offering where we've already captured the relationship with the customer that we could be getting more money from them, every month or every year, or, depending on the period. And so those kinds of things, those kinds of exercises will, help you with your top line. And a lot of times we ask the customers. I mean, there are parts of our business where we will literally survey the customers and say, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And a lot of them will give us feedback, on a just like, hey, here's something that I want basis. And if we get enough people who are interested in it, and it seems like a good use of our time, or if we can find a partner sometimes to bring in and create an ancillary partnership revenue stream where they're fulfilling the business, but we're kind of creating that connection and leveraging our customer base, that's another great way that we do things. So I think if you look at both sides, you look at the revenue, the top line, and you also look at sort of the expenses and the operations, growing the top line, shrinking the expenses, and optimizing the business, that's the best way to move your business forward.
Man, these are great points, because advice on productivity and efficiency, people should be doing more of that. The only thing is there's so many software and apps going on today, and it's pretty overloaded, right? Like there's a lot going on. So whatever works and whatever you find that is taking a lot of time, bottlenecks and things that people aren't passionate doing, like people hate paperwork, right? People hate things that boggle them down. So find something that can speed up those tasks and make sure that everyone's on the same page and using that new software and app, right?
Absolutely.
And then in terms of like the revenue, those are really good points, because if you think about that customer stickiness, right? They're so loyal to you. And if you just find out what their needs are or what challenges they have, these are just opportunities that can generate more revenue and make you even more sticky to them, because you're now able to satisfy them or create that better relationship, because they're looking for something and they just want you're a trusted resource to them to offer it. So
and they want it to be easy for them, and the less people they have to deal with, the better.
Exactly. So it's all about stickiness and relationship building, right? And the more touch points that you have on that, like you mentioned, like you reach out to them. Those are great points. And even if you're able to do it once a year, twice a year, even an email survey, how am I doing? Is there anything that we're kind of lacking on? What kind of product or service are you looking for in the next 3 or 6 months? That gives you great insight and feedback that you don't have to invest a lot of money to do surveys from customers that aren't even your customers.
Correct.
Right? And then drip them on a newsletter or anything that kind of like a referral program or something to keep them engaged with what's going on with you. Right? So all that, I mean, whatever you're doing is obviously working, because, I try to practice this and I teach this a lot to a lot of my customers. The challenge is, for me, it's getting in front of more audience, right? Getting a larger people to know what we're doing and what we strive to become, because we're basically partners. We want to help businesses grow and succeed and do things ethically and do things the right way with an honest partner, right? That knows their stuff, right? The challenge is there's a lot of people that claim they know their stuff, but do they really?
Yep, and that's where things like testimonials and referrals become so important on both sides, for you as a business and also as a customer, to make sure that you're getting somebody that someone else has said, yeah, this is somebody that I trust in these areas, and you can see if it's a fit for you.
Yeah, social proof is so important. White papers, testimonials, great. So in terms of like some of the technology or software advances over the years, are there certain things that you use in your business that you can kind of recommend or let business owners know that are very critical to the success of your business?
It's a great question. I think it really depends on the business because obviously if you are B2C versus B2B, if you're somebody who's got a heavy customer service intake versus somebody who doesn't, depending on how you like to do your workflow, there are all kinds of technologies. I mean, I'm pretty basic. I've done a lot of work with Microsoft in the past. The Microsoft suite of products, which is very, very cost efficient, kind of does it for me for a lot of it. We also use a couple of different email providers for different parts of our business, kind of depending on what our focus is. Email is still a really big thing, particularly in one of our businesses that is, two of our businesses that are product driven, having those kinds of emails on an ongoing basis. We have one part of our business where we have a 90+% open rates on our emails, which is insane. I think the industry standards in the high teens now, because we really kind of honed in on making sure that these newsletters and updates and opportunities are things that the people want to hear, and it's the kind of business that sustains that. But if you're in a business to business forum, that kind of a newsletter might not be as relevant, but you're still probably going to want to have one. We're also, in the process for one of our businesses at looking at a customer service automation software, one that has automated AI learning so that when people ask questions, we're understanding what the responses are so that we can do a lot more self-serve in terms of the customer service instead of using agents on that. So there's really like every aspect of the business, there's an opportunity to use some technology, and it can either help make your people more efficient and help them do a better job, or sometimes it can just move them onto other tasks. And so I would just, depending on your business, we focus on what are those things that you do, and I swear there's a tech for pretty much all of it.
No, that's amazing. I mean, in terms of automation, people are very scared in terms of what it really means, right? But you have to really think about it as in your business. How can it be used for an effective tool to streamline some of the costs and reduce some of the tedious tasks, right? That's the whole point of automation.
Right. I mean, if you go through, let's say, your emails, and 80% of your emails are all asking the same handful of questions, you could have your email responder say, is it one of these questions? Give them the answer. And then if it's not, they can talk to a live agent. You've just cut out 80% of the emails and made it more faster for people to access that information, which the customer wants fast access to that information. So you don't necessarily lose anything on the customer standpoint. You're still providing the high touch service for more complex issues. But for the things that are just, stupid and on your website and somebody answers it the same thing over and over again, you don't need that touch point. So it's about finding that optimization for your business.
That's amazing. So in terms of like intake, what you mean by that is a landing page with more refined questions to really hone down on if you're the right type of client, or if, whatever service or product you're offering, just refine it so that you can really go after the quality type of clients that you want to work with versus going after a broad shotgun approach where everyone's kind of just filling out your form, not knowing what they're going to get.
Or just making the information accessible. I mean, I think about something like a restaurant where you have to dig around to find the menu or to find their hours of operation or just, their phone number, something basic that you could put that right up front and make it more easy to access. That in and of itself, it could be it's a small optimization that would pay off huge for the restaurant. So again, it really depends on the kind of business you have.
Exactly. And I think you've touched upon like email where a lot of people who are just starting off, it's really more geared towards people that have an existing client base or a newsletter or people that are in your funnel where then you can drip them with a lot of different campaigns, or you can use a HubSpot or Infusionsoft or even MailChimp and cater it, right? Where it allows you to automate some of the stuff that can potentially not just make them more sticky, but also get them to really buy other products and services or refer you, forward it to other people. Like it's just utilizing some of this technology to your benefit to help you grow your business.
Absolutely.
right? So in terms of like, I know when you were first starting, did you ever attend like a lot of the networking events or going to a lot of the forums online today? Like, how did you get involved into doing your own thing? Like,
I hate networking. I'm an introvert, strangely enough, even though I'm on TV and everyone thinks I've got a big personality. I get like, it's a big energy suck for me to, shake hands. In fact, I was at a convention yesterday and I needed a nap when I was done with it. So I do not enjoy that. I'm more proficient in using my own network. So who do I know, reaching out to people individually for very specific pieces of help instead of kind of broadly saying like, oh, who do I need to meet? And people are very willing to help you if they know how to help you. So if you can make really specific asks, I'm looking for this and this and this specifically, and hopefully giving each of those people just one or two things because they're not going to remember 3 or 4 or 5. That's been much more effective for me than, kind of randomly going out to, broad networking. Now, granted, if you're in one industry really deeply, it may make sense for you. It's just, I'm doing a lot of different things and it's just not my thing. So I tend to focus on, what works for me.
No, that's all that matters, right? As a business owner, whatever you're comfortable with, focus on that and just do it really well, right? And
yeah, well, you might not be comfortable with it, but do focus on one thing because you got to be uncomfortable some of the time. But yeah, pick what's going to serve you, and like you said, go deep. And that goes with anything, with social media, with marketing strategy. Like you're going to be much better off focusing on 1 or 2 social platforms than trying to be on all of them.
That's
and
true.
The one that you pick, where your customers are at. If you're focused on CEOs, be on LinkedIn. If you're focused on Gen Z, be on TikTok.
Yeah. You have to understand what the platform is and what the demographic it serves. Definitely. In terms of, what drives you today? Like in terms of your passion, it sounds like you have so much energy and it sounds like you're having so much fun. So what really motivates you to do what you're doing today and what excites you?
I'm just very naturally curious. And I'm also greedy in the sense of I like to be involved in everything. So it kind of feeds my sort of curiosity and being a part of different things. And I think that's just, part of my nature. I'm the type of person that likes to create. I view the world in terms of you can either create, consume, destruct, or do nothing. There's only so much consuming that I like to do. I'm pretty happy with the basics. So, that's kind of how I divvy up my time, and creating gives me energy. And so just that curiosity and desire to create and be productive drives me. And when it doesn't, I find something else.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that you're so curious because it's very similar to a trait that I'm so curious in terms of people, relationships, business, health, whatever it is. I'm always asking questions just because I don't know the answer, right? And they obviously are experts or the speakers or whatever it is. I'm always asking. And, I'm always constantly learning and I'm having fun doing it, right?
Good. So I know we're running low on time here. So how do we wrap this?
Yeah. So I wanted to let people know, how can some of the listeners get a hold of you, your business, reach you directly, or find you on social?
Yes, so there are a number of this is going to be a long episode of the podcast. No, just kidding. So the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is to check out my product, Future File, at futurefile.com. If you have an aging loved one, if you have a spouse, if you have kids, and you have not prepared all of your information and wishes, everything from what do you want to have happen to your social media account to your Bitcoin passwords and keys and wallets to everything in between. You haven't made those preparations, even for an emergency or a medical situation, your medicines, your doctors, all of that in one place that someone can find. You need to do that. So please visit futurefile.com. I also have a small business community, as I mentioned, at carolroth.com. And then across platforms, I use the handle at Carol JS Roth, ROTH. As you can probably tell from this interview, I'm very in your face and also a little bit snarky. So if you really like the snark, visit me on Twitter. If you want pretty pictures, visit me on Instagram. Or if you want something a little more professional, you can follow me on LinkedIn. And those are sort of the best places to connect with me on an ongoing basis. I also have the book, The Entrepreneur Equation, if you're thinking about starting a business, that really puts you through the paces to see if you're pursuing the right kind of business and you're ready for it. And John, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a great discussion.
No, I had a ton of fun, and I know you gave a ton of great advice and snippets in terms of how to be successful and what drove you, right? So I really want to thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule to be here on our show.
And one more thing too, yeah. I've also got a podcast called The Roth Effect, if you're interested in sort of heady topics around current events as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Carol.
Thanks
I'll definitely be in touch. If you're ever in Toronto,
yes,
ping me, let me know. I'll be delighted to take you out and show you around.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, John.
Okay, have a great one, Carol.
Okay.
See ya.